For centuries, the galaxy saw humanity as an upstart species, reckless, ambitious, and far too young to play in the political games of the great powers. The Andrix Dominion, rulers of nearly 70 star systems, spoke of humans with casual arrogance, calling them resourceful pests. Their fleets were vast, their armies countless. If Earth ever dared to rise too high, the Andrix promised, they would crush it in days. That promise was about to be tested. The war began with a trade dispute, a blockade of Earth's outer colonies that spiraled into armed conflict. In the Dominion's war councils, the mood was confident. Humanity's navy was small, their world scattered. The Dominion's fleets, by comparison, were an endless tide of steel and plasma. The plan was simple: strike fast, hit Earth's shipyards, and force surrender before the humans could rally. It would have worked if the Dominion's admirals truly understood what they were walking into. The first sign that something was wrong came from the deep space listening posts along the rim. Long-range gravimetric sensors lit up with anomalies, massive gravitational distortions moving faster than light. At first, analysts thought they were rogue planets passing through hyperspace corridors. But the patterns didn't match natural bodies. These things were moving deliberately. Then came the visual feed. A scout ship, small, fast, and cloaked, had managed to intercept one of the anomalies near the edge of the Kuiper belt. Its captain sent back a single transmission before the feed went dead, a shadow, impossibly large, eclipsing the stars. Armor plating stretched for thousands of kilometers. Entire mountain ranges were bolted to its hull. The feed froze just as a colossal aperture opened, revealing a weapon array the size of a city. The Dominion dismissed it as human propaganda. A trick. A fear tactic. After all, no species could secretly build something so vast without being noticed. They were wrong. Humanity's secret had been centuries in the making. While the great powers bickered over resource rights and territorial disputes, humans had quietly been mining the frozen worlds of the Kuiper belt. But these weren't mining operations. They were excavations. Entire dwarf planets were hollowed out, their cores replaced with reactor chambers, their crusts reinforced with armor layers thicker than battleships. The scale was beyond comprehension: engines buried beneath continents, shield arrays covering entire hemispheres, weapons capable of vaporizing moons in a single salvo. They called them Titans. And now, for the first time, a Titan was leaving the shadows. The Dominion's main fleet had assembled over Andrix Prime, preparing for the final push toward Earth. They had no warning, just a ripple in space, a wave of distortion that made every sensor scream. And then it appeared. From the void, a world emerged. Not a planet, a ship. Over 2,000 kilometers in diameter, its surface bristling with defense towers, orbital cannons, and swarms of drone launch bays. Its arrival blotted out the sun over half the hemisphere. The Dominion's admiral stared at the display in disbelief. That's not possible. No one fired at first. The sheer size of the thing froze the entire armada in place. Then, over every comm channel, a single human voice echoed. War is over. You just haven't realized it yet. The Titan didn't open fire, not immediately. It simply moved into position, its massive bulk casting a shadow over the capital continent below. Entire cities fell into darkness. Panic erupted on the surface as the population looked up and saw an alien sky, a sky of metal. The Dominion fleet scrambled, hundreds of warships locking weapons and moving to intercept. Compared to the Titan, they looked like gnats. Plasma volleys streaked toward its hull, and vanished against an energy barrier so vast it shimmered like a planetary atmosphere. The Titan's shields absorbed gigaton-level strikes without so much as a flicker. Then the Titan spoke again. Stand down. Or we demonstrate why we built them. The Dominion didn't listen. Pride demanded resistance. Their dreadnoughts surged forward, launching every weapon they had. Missiles detonated against the Titan's hull like fireworks against a mountain. Beams of plasma flared and died. The Titan finally responded. A single shot won. From a spinal cannon hidden deep within its core. The beam wasn't light, it was raw, compressed gravitational energy. It tore through the lead dreadnought, then the two ships behind it, then the orbital station in its path. All four were gone in a heartbeat, reduced to expanding clouds of molten debris. The Dominion fleet froze. Every second the Titan remained, the sense of scale sank deeper into the minds of the Dominion's leaders. They weren't looking at a warship, they were looking at a mobile nation. Thousands of crew members, millions of drones, self-sustaining ecosystems inside. It could sit in orbit for decades without resupply. And humanity hadn't built just one. Even as the Dominion debated surrender, reports began coming in from across their territory. More Titans emerging from deep space folds. One over the mining capital of Bresser 4. Another blocking the wormhole gate to the Gedrix cluster. A third parked quietly over the Dominion's shipyards, watching. The realization hit like a cold knife: humanity had been underestimated for too long. They had played the role of the scrappy newcomers, biding their time while the galaxy squabbled. And in the dark, they had built monsters. The Andrix Dominion signed a ceasefire within hours. There was no negotiation, only terms dictated by the humans. Withdrawal from all occupied human worlds. Reparations. A guarantee of non-aggression. The war had lasted 3 weeks. The end took less than a day. In the years that followed, the Titans became the silent enforcers of galactic peace. They rarely moved, rarely spoke. They didn't need to. Every fleet commander, every emperor, every warlord who looked at the stars at night knew the truth: somewhere out there, a shadow bigger than a planet was watching. The galaxy didn't cope. It adapted. And humanity, for the first time in history, stopped being underestimated. The Interstellar Senate believed it had control over everything. Every weapon tested, every fleet movement authorized, every military experiment monitored under its all-seeing eye. It was the galaxy's great safeguard, a council where even the most aggressive empires were forced to lay their cards on the table. But there was one species that had learned how to play the game differently. Humans were new to the Senate, barely 3 centuries into their membership. They had brought innovation, speed, and a dangerous unpredictability to galactic politics. The elder races mocked them as impulsive and naive, quick to talk, quick to fight, and far too attached to their romantic notions of freedom. What the galaxy didn't know was that humanity had been lying to them from the moment they arrived. It began as a mining initiative, a perfectly ordinary request to strip mine the Kuiper Belt and outer system asteroids for industrial metals. The Senate approved it without hesitation. Humans were known for their hunger for expansion. Ships left Sol by the hundreds, carrying labor crews and construction materials into the dark. But those weren't mining ships. They were siege ships. Each carried a piece of something far greater, a project that would take centuries to complete. The crews worked in silence, often generations away from Earth, transforming frozen planetoids into the foundations of something unimaginable. Caves became hangars. Craters became reactor chambers. Planetary crusts were lined with armor plating hundreds of meters thick. The name was whispered only among humanity's highest military council, Project Goliath. For nearly 200 years, the Goliaths grew in the dark, hidden behind the galaxy's blind spots. By the time rumors reached alien intelligence agencies, the ships were already awake. Massive gravitational signatures appeared in deep space, moving with deliberate, coordinated precision. The Senate laughed off the reports. No one could build something so large without detection. They were still laughing when the first sighting came. It happened in the Quar Expanse. The Quar were predators, an empire of raiders who struck without warning. They had been pressing deeper into human space, confident that Earth's fleets couldn't stop them. At the Expanse's wormhole gate, a massive invasion force gathered, 300 ships ready to spill into human territory. Then, the wormhole gate shut. Not by system failure, not by attack, by obstruction. Something had emerged from hyperspace and physically blocked it. From the perspective of the Quar fleet, it was like staring into the night and seeing a wall where the stars should be. The wall moved. Witnesses described it as a continent in motion. The Goliath's surface was jagged with mountain-sized armor plates, rivers of molten heat flowing from reactor vents, and valleys where city-sized cannons rotated into position. The drive flares at its rear lit the void like a newborn star. No one in the Quar fleet dared fire. They didn't have the range, and even if they did, what would be the point? The Goliath opened comms on a frequency that bypassed every encryption. A human voice, calm, almost bored, spoke. "This is sovereign territory. Leave now, or we remove you." The Gvar laughed. And then the Goliath fired. One beam. Just one. It was not light, it was matter turned into pure annihilation, a lance of energy that erased the lead battleship from existence. Not destroyed. Not damaged. Gone. The ships behind it vanished seconds later, consumed in the expanding wave of heat and radiation. The rest fled without another word. Word of the incident spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The Senate demanded answers. Humanity remained silent. But then more sightings came. A second Goliath appeared over Bresser 4, one of the galaxy's largest weapons manufacturing worlds, just as two alien factions began a siege. The war stopped overnight. A third was spotted drifting slowly through the Gedrix cluster, blocking access to a starforge that had supplied fleets for millennia. The alien empire that owned the forge didn't dare approach. And then the truth began to emerge. There wasn't just one Goliath. There were at least 7. Each a mobile world, each self-sustaining, each equipped with enough firepower to cripple an empire. The Senate tried to calculate the resources required: tens of thousands of years of work, trillions of tons of materials, fleets dedicated entirely to logistics. It was impossible. And yet, humanity had done it in less than 2 centuries. How? The answer was simple. They had hidden their progress inside the Senate's own bureaucracy. Every mining request, every fleet movement, every civilian project had been a cover for Goliath construction. The galaxy had been watching humanity's right hand, never noticing what the left was building in the dark. By the time the Senate called an emergency session to confront humanity, the Goliaths had already moved into position. Each parked in orbit over a key strategic world, sometimes human, sometimes alien. No declaration of war. No demands. Just presence. Because the message was clear. We don't need to invade. We're already here. The political shockwaves were unprecedented. The Andrix Dominion, long an enemy of Earth, signed an immediate non-aggression pact. The Trask hegemony suspended its military expansion overnight. Even the Quar, the galaxy's most feared raiders, vanished from human space entirely. The Senate tried to pass laws to limit planetary scale ship construction. Humanity vetoed them. No one argued. The galaxy never officially declared humanity the dominant power. But it didn't need to. Every ruler knew that somewhere in the void, a Goliath might be drifting unseen, its massive silhouette blotting out the stars. For humanity, this was more than deterrence. It was a statement. They had entered the galaxy as the smallest voice in the room. Now, they were the shadow over the table. And the galaxy could never cope with that. In the deep void beyond the known trade lanes, there are places even smugglers refuse to go. Empty sectors where no star shines, where sensors return nothing but static, and where strange gravitational echoes ripple through the dark. It was in those places that the first whispers began, tales of moving planets. The stories came from freighter captains who swore they'd seen mountains drifting across the stars, and from prospectors who vanished after venturing too far into the outer rim. Most called it a myth. The galactic media mocked it openly. Humanity was a rising but still minor power. They could barely maintain their fleets, much less build anything that could rival a moon. The galaxy laughed, until the siege of Vega 4. The siege had dragged on for weeks. The Ketheri Imperium's fleet surrounded the human colony world, bombarding its shielded cities day and night. Supplies were running out. The last civilian transports had been destroyed days ago. Every distress call went unanswered. Humanity's navy was tied up on the far side of the Orion Arm. The Ketheri fleet prepared their final strike, deploying a weapon that could shatter the planet's crust. It was then that the stars went out. At first, the Ketheri thought it was a sensor glitch, some kind of electromagnetic interference. But then, the darkness moved. A curve of black metal began to slide across the sky, blotting out the distant suns. It was so vast, so impossibly large, that it took several minutes just for the full shape to drift into view. It wasn't a planet. It was a ship. The Kethari admiral, seasoned and unshaken by a lifetime of war, found his voice trembling. "How big is it?" he demanded. The answer came back, barely believable, over 2,000 kilometers across. The vessel's surface was unlike anything in the Kethari database. Miles-high ridges of armor plating stretched like mountain ranges. City-sized cannons tracked slowly across the void. Towering spires pulsed with shield energy strong enough to shrug off the blast of a collapsing star. It moved without haste, positioning itself directly between the Kethari fleet and Vega 4. And then, without warning, every Kethari ship's systems went dead. The comms crackled to life. A human voice, deep and steady, spoke. "Your siege is over. Leave. Now." The Kethari tried to respond, but before they could, the war world fired. It was not a beam of light or a swarm of missiles, it was a ripple in space itself. A gravitational shockwave surged outward, crushing the nearest destroyer into a ball of molten metal before hurling it into the planet's atmosphere. The next ship in line simply disintegrated, its atoms scattered into the void. The rest of the fleet broke instantly. No formation. No coordinated retreat. Just panic. Vega 4 citizens emerged from their shelters to see a sky filled not with stars, but with the endless black surface of their savior. Children pointed at the massive ridges, mistaking them for mountains. Adults stood frozen, unable to comprehend that something so large could move. And then, just as silently as it had arrived, the war world turned away and vanished into the dark. No victory speech. No promise of return. Only the unspoken warning: humanity could see you, and humanity could stop you. The galaxy erupted in chaos. The smugglers' old myths were suddenly credible. Intelligence agencies across a dozen empires scrambled to confirm what they were now calling planet ships. The search was futile. The human war world's titans, as they were later named, were invisible until they wanted to be seen. They traveled in the deep shadows between star systems, masking their gravitational signatures and bending light around their massive hulls. Even the most advanced sensor arrays detected nothing until it was far too late. Over the next few years, more sightings occurred. A titan appeared above the capital of the Drushti Combine during a coup attempt. The coup collapsed within hours. Another was seen drifting slowly past the border of the Oryx hegemony. 3 weeks later, the hegemony cancelled its planned invasion of human space. One even emerged within visual range of the interstellar Senate itself, hovering silently before fading back into the void. By then, the galaxy had pieced together the truth. Humanity had been building these war worlds in secret for generations. They had used the outer rim as a shield, constructing their titans in the cold, lightless sectors where no one dared to travel. Each one was a self-sustaining fortress, capable of operating for centuries without resupply. No one knew how many there were. Some claimed 5. Others whispered there were dozens. The uncertainty was worse than the reality, because every fleet commander, every emperor, every warlord was forced to ask themselves, "Is one watching me right now?" The Titans never invaded. They never declared war. They didn't need to. Their presence alone ended conflicts before they began. When the Gyre Collective threatened to blockade Earth's trade routes, a Titan appeared in the same system as their homeworld. The blockade never happened. When the Var Syndicate began raiding human colonies, a Titan was spotted on the edge of Syndicate space. The raids stopped overnight. The pattern was clear: humanity had become the galaxy's quiet enforcer. No speeches. No negotiations. Just shadows in the dark. And in the quiet corners of the galaxy, where smugglers still trade in rumors, the old stories have changed. They no longer talk about moving planets as a myth. They talk about them as a warning. They say if you see the stars vanish, it's already too late. If the sky turns black and the darkness moves, it's not the void you're looking at, it's them. The war worlds. The Watchers. The Titans. And the last thing you will ever hear is a human voice, calm and certain, telling you to leave or be erased. Now the galaxy knows the truth: humanity doesn't need to outnumber you. They only need one ship. And it's already in position.